Brought to you by Hug House Productions.
Hi, hello, listener of Nevermorphed. If you like this show, I am convinced you are going to love The Newest Olympian by Mike Schubert. Why am I so certain? Because that's one of the shows that inspired this show. Real ones who listen to the credits already know. Each week, Mike dives into the Percy Jackson series, which I love, joined by guests who are longtime fans of the Rick Riordan series. If you haven't read these books yet, this is the perfect way to get started and read along with Mike. They're so good. And like Animorphs, they're kids' books that touch on way more serious topics than you might expect. And they're about worldwide mythologies, starting with Greek and Roman. I know you gays love mythology. If you have already read the books and know how good they are, you'll love this series too. The dramatic irony, man. And if you know about the books from the Disney Plus series, Mike has done interviews and conversations with some of the cast of the show on The Newest Olympian too. Mike is a great host, a great editor, and obviously a huge inspiration for me. You can find The Newest Olympian in the show notes or wherever you get your podcasts. Go subscribe right now and enjoy. Welcome to the first proper episode of Nevermorphed, a podcast in which I, Will Williams, read every single book in the Animorphs series for the first time and then discuss it with a hardcore Animorphs fan. This is a podcast about a book series for kids, but I am very much an adult, and the show is made for adult audiences. This week, we are starting with the very first book and also a bunch of stuff I figured out between episode 0 and now. This episode is going to be the first half of our book 1 conversation because there was a lot to talk about, like a lot. If you want the full discussion of book 1 with over 20 deleted bits of convo, a whopping 3-ish hours of audio, go hit up our Patreon at patreon.com/hughousepods. There you can also find bonus audio of my live reactions to the books and my notes as I read. You get those whenever they're done instead of having to wait between each book. My guest this week is the incredible Leigh Pfeffer of the podcast History is Gay. This podcast is a meticulously researched dive into queer history that I can't recommend enough. I've really enjoyed the episodes on Sister Rosetta Tharpe and the Amazons, and you can find a link to both of those episodes in the show notes. Leigh is one of the main reasons this podcast even exists, so I absolutely had to bring them on to talk about the first 2 books. Leigh, it is so good to have you here. You are arguably the person who got me to take this from like a joke to an actual podcast.
Yeah.
So when I was first talking about this potential idea, I think on Tumblr, you were like, Will, you got to do this. And also, can I guest?
Yeah. Just slide into your DMs. Like, yeah. Animorphs posting? What?
Which ideal for me because I really had no fucking clue just how intense this fan base was. I really went in knowing so little. And I was like, is anybody going to give a shit? Is anybody even going to want to guest? So thank you, because I have been having the time of my life.
Yes.
So far.
I'm so happy that you are having a good time. I mean, I think one of the first things that I said to you, because I think you mentioned it on like Facebook first, just that you were gonna, you were gonna like read the books as your New Year's resolution, and that's when I was like, oh my god, Will, Animorphs, I'm obsessed, blah 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 blah.
So let's talk about your history with Animorphs. We know that mine is like literally nothing, and we'll get into the things that I've already gotten really, really wrong. But I would love to know your history. When did you first encounter Animorphs?
So I don't really know what age I was. I was young. I was in elementary school. And I think I just found them at that magical place called the Scholastic Book Fair. I think I just picked them up. I was the kid who really loved animals, who instead of hanging out with people in recess, I was in the library reading nature books. I was reading like different series, like each, like there was a collection of books in the library, and I remember really liking the one about like the white-tailed deer, right? Like I had zoo books, I had wildlife fact files, right? Like I was the animals kid. I was the kid who pretended to play doggy way too late and had, like the principal call my mom in because they got a call, she got a call saying, hey, your kid was playing doggy and bit another kid. Awesome. so I was primed for this shit. And it just like, it became my first fandom, like pre-internet fandom, and none of my friends, nobody I knew was into them except for my cousin. So shout out to my cousin Lily, because it was like a 2-person fandom for us. We would sit, like anytime we would visit each other, we would be sitting on the couch and reading the books. I actually have very, very vivid memories of reading the last book together on her couch in LA.
Did you watch the TV show when it came out?
I did. It was an experience. It's I mean, I was so excited to have any content, honestly, because like it was very isolating because I didn't know anybody. It was like my cousin's friends were actually into it. Like I remember a birthday party in some restaurant where it was just a bunch of us batshit kids running around this restaurant playing Animorphs. Like that's how young I was, right? I think the last book came out in 2001. So I literally, like, I grew up with the books. Up. Yeah. Well, because I started in 96.
But there's like, whoa, hold on.
We will talk about this.
What?
Yeah. So after like book 20 something, they were ghostwritten because poor Catherine Applegate, and her husband Michael Grant, who is an uncredited writer, they wrote these together. Simply could not keep up with the schedule that Scholastic had them doing, because that's insane.
What was the schedule?
They had to put out like a book a month. Yeah.
No,
so like
what?
Anybody who's like, oh, their later books are ghostwritten, it's like, are you kidding? They were churning them out like literally just factory style. Like this is what Scholastic was like in the 90s. And so the last book came out in 2001, which was when I was in when I was just finishing junior high or starting high school. So I literally grew up with these books.
Wow.
Yeah.
My mind is like literally blown right now. I thought you were going to say like, the last book came out in like 2008, 2012.
Nope.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And there's 54 books in the main series.
Yes.
And then there's like 6 or 7 like side books as well. So, and those side books were all, except for the Alternamorphs, which are like choose your own adventure. All the other ones were like written by Applegate and Grant.
Wow. Well, let's pivot real quick into the things that I have found out since I recorded the pilot episode, because I feel like there's a lot here. So first off, I think maybe the silliest revelation is it didn't really occur to me that the books would all have titles.
Okay. Interesting.
That's nothing. I really was expecting like Animorphs Book 1, Animorphs Book 2, because there's so many. No, they straight up have titles.
They straight up have titles. And honestly, sometimes the titles really don't seem to align. Like, I think that the titles mostly were things that like Scholastic came up with.
Totally.
I think I remember reading somewhere in Catherine Applegate's she did like a Reddit AMA several years ago that is very good, and you should absolutely not read it until you finish. Because it's chock full of spoilers. But yeah, I think that like Scholastic came up with the titles. The fact that like book 2 is like The Visitor. Like,
Yeah, what's that about?
I feel like that would have been even better for book one, but like Elfangor, The Visitor. But
Absolutely.
I guess what? Like just Rachel's the visitor in the Chapman house?
Man, I guess. So for listeners, we're recording on books 1 and 2 today.
Editing Will here from the future. No, the fuck we didn't. We talked for 4 hours about book 1. We recorded for book 2 several weeks later.
So I have read book 2, but that's it. That's all I've read.
I know
so
there's
excited.
there's so much I have to hold back from you.
Other things I have found out since starting that I have questions about. One thing I was wrong about is that there absolutely were video games.
Yes, there were.
I've heard they were okay. There's also graphic novels. You said that these are kind of recent?
Yeah, they're really recent. 2020, I think the first one came out. They're
Crazy.
up to I think they're up to like number 4. I've only read the first 2. I need to catch up on them. But
how'd you like them?
I think they're fun. I mean, there's something I think that is inherently missing in the fact that so much of the horror and the gravitas of the books is portrayed through the POV. And I'm a kind of person who, like, I'm not really into first person POV with stuff that I read, especially with like I especially don't read it with fic. Fic is weird for me. But these books, I feel like there's like no other way to do it. And so I think that they're really fun. I really love the characterizations and the artwork and seeing things come to life. And I think it lends really well to a visual medium, because I've said to myself, like, we had the TV show and you're so limited by by graphics.
Yeah. I think this is another classic case of like a series that really should have been animated.
Exactly. That's what I was just about to say, is I have wanted to see an Animorphs animated series for so long. And so this is like the closest we can get to it. And I think it's really fun.
I want to see it specifically by the team that did Young Justice.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I think that would be, I think that they would fucking nail it.
Yeah. I think like the art in the Chris Grind books are really fun, but I always felt like it would be they're very it's very like, what's the word, like it's very round, it's very bubbly, and I always felt like a great like animated depiction and animated adaptation would be really good with really like hard angular lines of animation.
Yes, it's such a sharp series, except for when it's not, which we'll get to with Elfangor, the prince.
Yeah.
Another thing I found out, what's with these alternate covers? I was only ever familiar with that like classic Animorphs like morph process cover, like the big iconic covers. And then I go Googling and there's like other covers of them like mid-morph that are repulsive in a new way. Where did these come from?
So that doesn't come across very well online, because they're lenticular covers. So
get out of town. Are you kidding me?
No.
Holy shit.
It's a lenticular panel on the front. Yeah, so I think I was looking it up. I think in 2010 they like relaunched the series. They tried to relaunch it. So they like, I think they put out like, they said that they were doing like 1 through 6 right away. Like there was a bunch of marketing around it. And this was actually around the time that I was an independent bookseller. So I was like, fuck yes!
Yeah.
So excited! I can finally recommend Animorphs to people on my job. Because, they were out of print for so long.
They were?
Oh yeah, they're still out of print.
What?
They're out of print. Yeah.
Is that why they were allowed to make the PDFs?
Yeah.
I was literally like, I thought that the PDFs were like an official release from K.A. Applegate. And I was like, first off, how does she have the rights to do that? And then I saw that they weren't. And I mean, was like,
she's chill with it. She's absolutely chill with it. But yeah, no, they've been they're out of print.
Wow. Whoa.
They did this like relaunch. They updated some things in the books. So some of the things that were like really 90s centric and updated them to be a little bit more modern. I think that they like cleaned up a couple of of continuity errors, which is funny. In the fandom, they're called Casu's Catherine Applegate screw ups, which are things that she called them herself, I believe.
That's very cute.
Yeah, it very much reminds me of Xena fandom continuity errors, which is just called Yaxi, yet another Xena inconsistency. Just that era of fandom where nothing is standardized and you just have everything really insular. It's great.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
that's so cute.
But they didn't do well, and so I think that they stopped after like book 7. I think they released book 8, but only in ebook form.
Let's get into book 1.
Yes,
because yeah, I obviously did not read these growing up. I wish I had, and reading them as an adult, this shit fucking slaps. It's so good. It's so good right off the bat. I like couldn't believe it. It's so fun. It's so riveting, and it's so dark.
They're
like,
so dark.
Immediately, it's so fucking dark.
Half of the getting people into Animorphs is that there's so many memes about like, oh, did anybody ever read those Animorphs books, or did they just look at the weird covers and blah blah blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, you don't understand. These are hard. I mean, yes, there's like, oh, sick dude, let's play video games and blah 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 blah, but it's also, these are child soldiers in an intergalactic war, and they all get real fucked up about it.
Yeah, like these games, I mean, these books right off the get-go are not like, they're not fucking around with that. They are here to tell a story with intense themes, and it doesn't, well, I would say it doesn't ease you into it, but I bet it does. It just starts at such a higher level than like any other children's series. I would say that these books are even more brutal than a series of unfortunate events.
Yeah.
Because at least that series is like fun about it. You know, there's like a sense of whimsy and a sense of like the tragedy being so tragic that it loops back around to comic. Like they're dark comedies. This isn't that at all.
No, it's, I mean, there's like moments of levity, but it's very much I mean, these kids are literally in book 1 and book 2 waking up from PTSD nightmares.
Yes. Let's dive right into the first chapter. So first chapter is like, I think, a pretty typical, like starting right off the bat, young adult fiction, or I have been told middle grade fiction. It starts with that, like, you know, the kind of introduction that we get in like a Percy Jackson where it's like, hi, I'm Jake. You don't have my last name. It's too dangerous. Everything is fuck and shit's so bad. And I was like, cool, starting off with this like pretty, you know, very, very of this time introduction. One thing that has confused me so far is where this takes place and how old they are. So I looked up how old they are because I was convinced, I just like glossed over it when I read. But he doesn't say how old he is in this book, right?
Right. I don't think you get their actual ages until the very end.
Rachel in book 2 says she's 13 or 14.
Yeah.
Do we know where this takes place? Because I for some reason, I think this is because I lived, you know, I grew up in Arizona, and I think of everything as set on the West Coast. But since moving to the East Coast, it feels very East Coasty. Where is the set?
I cannot tell you.
For spoiler reasons?
You will find out sort of where they are at the very, very end. It is revealed they're in the United States.
Yeah.
That we can, you know, that just culturally.
Yeah, it's a desperately American series.
It will be revealed by the end book what state they are in. But K.A. Applegate has specifically mentioned that it's not actually a real town, but the fandom has placed it near a couple of cities in redacted state. That could be a good option.
Cool. Oh man. Okay, this is like the boringest thing for me to have theories on.
No, it's good. I mean, because that's the whole point. Is, I mean, literally the opening lines of the book is, you know, Like, I won't even tell you where I live. You'll just have to trust me that it's a real place, a real town. It might even be your town.
Yeah. Like a year out from having moved from almost one coast to the other. Like, it's very top of mind right now. So we get this intro to Jake, and my assessment of Jake is I was not expecting. So I knew that he was going to be kind of like, you know, a boy TM, you know? I thought he was going to be a pretty typical boy, but dude, Jake is sad.
Jake is my poor baby boy. He takes on
himself.
He takes on so much more than he needs to.
Yes. Yes.
He carries so much guilt.
Yes.
And so much responsibility. And I mean, his friends kind of put him in that situation, but also he's
oh my god, yes.
But he is also the right guy for the job.
Yeah. He like right off the bat, like there is so much responsibility he is putting on his shoulders and so much he feels like he has to live up to. Like even like this initial conflict is that he didn't get on the basketball team and he's really upset about it because he feels like he's gonna disappoint his brother. Like
right, he doesn't even care about the fact that he didn't really get on the team. He cares that it's something that is important to his big brother who he looks up to so much, Tom.
Yeah.
Who was on the basketball team, who was a star player, and he's like, crap, I didn't get on. Tom's gonna be so disappointed in me.
Yeah. And I knew from like what I saw of the series, because I remember the first episode of the series, kind of, and I know that I knew reading that Tom got yerked. And so I knew off the bat, like, oh, this is gonna be so tragic. But I think I could have guessed that from like the moment in this introduction where Jake is like, yeah, I haven't really been connecting with Tom in the last couple of months. I think I would have been like, oh, he got yerked. Yeah. And we also get introduction to the other characters in pretty quick succession. So we've got Marco, who is Jake's bestie. He's kind of a wise guy. He kind of feels like a Sokka archetype a little bit.
He's absolutely a Sokka. He's like a 12-year-old stand-up comedian.
Yeah.
And a lot of what he says is not even necessarily things that he believes earnestly.
Yes.
It's stuff to just kind of be a little annoying butthead and like contrarian to just he likes pushing everybody's buttons because
and he's very
guess what? He's also deeply sad.
Yeah.
All of these characters are deeply sad.
I really waffle about Marco. I'm really excited to get to his POV because right now I don't like him very much. But I also completely understand where he's coming from and also that he's like a baby. But he's super reactionary. He doesn't even like he has very specific feelings that he clings onto for very good reasons. But it seems like everything else is almost always him being contrarian. And I think that's I think he's a great foil for Jake. Because Jake is a thinker. He's a ponderer. He likes mulling over and processing an issue. And Marco is like the opposite.
Yeah. That's really interesting to hear from me because once you get into Marco's POV, you're going to learn so much more about him and some of it is cover up, but I mean, he ends up I don't think it's a spoiler to say like he ends up becoming in the team like the strategist for a lot of stuff.
I fucking knew it. Sokka archetype.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, fuck yeah.
No, so when you said Sokka, I'm like, yeah, you got it.
So we also know that Jake has a crush on Cassie.
It's so obvious and it's so cute.
Yes. And like I cannot blame him. So Cassie, first off, she's a black girl. Like canonically and without ambiguity, she's a black girl. That's amazing.
Just this book in 1996 being like, Cassie wears overalls and she loves animals and she's black and I think she's really cute.
Yeah, and she's like quiet. Again, she's a processor. She is somebody who always has a kind word to say. She's a silver linings person. She always knows exactly what to say to like bring cohesion back to everybody and kind of de-escalate a situation really well, which I think is these are not characteristics that we see applied to Black women ever, even if they are young Black girls. Like, that's just not something we see. I really, really love her. I think that she's a delight. And notably, her parents are veterinarians, which we will get into.
How convenient.
How convenient.
It's really lucky that the kids who got the ability to turn into animals have such unfettered access to lots of different animals.
Yes, to like a wide range of
variety.
Animals.
Yeah.
We also get introduced pretty quickly to Tobias. He is getting swirlied. He is a
boy.
He seems a pretty one-to-one nerd archetype at first, but he is fascinating. He is complicated. In this first chapter, Jake and Marco are playing video games at the mall, and then they come across Rachel and Cassie, and Tobias is really talked about as like, he finds them and he says hi, and then he's just kind of like there, and they're like, oh, I guess he's hanging out with us now. They talk about him, having his head in the clouds, again, being somebody who's like bullied and seen as kind of like awkward. They also, at one point, he is like straight up stimming. He is pacing back and forth and like snapping his fingers, which I do have ADHD and like,
yeah. I
feel like I could claim him for us, but like my boy is neurodivergent for sure.
Absolutely.
So then we also meet Rachel, and Rachel's my girl. I'm biased. I've read book 2. I really like her. She's pretty, she's blonde, she's graceful. But she is a badass. She is very self-assured. In this first book, she doesn't really have time for bullshit or for games. She always has a retort to Marco. She's toe-to-toe with him. She's very sharp, and I really adore her. So something I have not come across yet in the books is I am pretty sure I have seen memes about Rachel being like totally fine with doing war crimes.
Yeah.
We'll tuck that in my back pocket for now, but that is something I am looking forward to. It's something I'm curious about.
Yeah.
So all of this whole group coalesces together in the mall. They decide that they're going to walk home together, and then they walk through this abandoned construction site. And I vaguely remembered again from the show that it had this sort of like industrial overgrown aesthetic, and that is one of the primary reasons I wanted to read these books is abandoned construction site with like grass and vines growing out of it. That's like gender number 1 for me.
Yes.
It's so fucking good. It is one of my favorite aesthetics. I'm somebody who could just like look at illustrations of power lines all day. So they walk through this construction site. Vibes are just peak. And I really loved that the way that all of this shit unfolds, this inciting incident happens in this space that is a combination of industrialization, technology, and nature. It's this site that has all of this metal and concrete, but it's being overgrown because it's been completely abandoned, which is it feels so Animorphs.
It's such a good locus for an entire story that's about transition and really violent transition.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And it's this, combination of this sci-fi aesthetic and technology and these very primal, biological, natural thoughts and feelings and experiences of transforming into animals. Like, it just seems, it's so perfect. What a perfect place to set this in. So they arrive in this construction zone, and literally end of chapter 1, oh, hey, that's a spaceship.
Yeah. Tobias is just like,
Yeah. So this spaceship has a dying alien coming out of it, and this alien is an Andalite.
I'm so interested to hear your response to the Andalite. Like what you, because you haven't, I mean, you saw the the TV series a little bit,
Yes.
but like what is, based on the description in the book, like what is your visual of this character?
So it's definitely informed by the TV show, but it's much more whimsical, almost like Miyazaki, like Princess Mononoke forest spirit in my head.
Mm.
I see the Andalite as much like fluffier in its
Mhm.
body
Mhm.
than it was so, sleek in the show. Also, hey, that's a manticore. That's just straight up a manticore. Like that is a manticore a little bit to the left.
Yeah. It's like a centaur manticore.
Yeah. I think it's a really lovely description. And when it got introduced, but especially when they go into his ship, which we'll get to in a second, I really thought he was a baby.
I saw that in your notes.
I was like convinced it was a baby. Also, I don't trust him.
The man just died, Will.
I know. So I think that I'm so used to fucked up media for adults that like when a nice thing happens and like a character seems good, I'm immediately like, secret villain. So
meanwhile, Will's over here be like, I don't know, the Yerks seem fine. I love slugs.
The ship comes down. They start trying to talk to the ship, which I thought is very funny. But then they're definitely talking to this alien who is dying, and he is like really chill about dying. He's just very factual.
Yeah.
And
it should be said he's not actually talking.
Oh, you're right. So he's not speaking out loud. He doesn't have like a mouth. He has like,
I'm
slits. Not wild.
It's like a note. It's where he doesn't have a mouth. Where your nose would be, it's like slits.
Yeah.
Like vertical slits.
No, I don't love that. So he talks to them telepathically, and they can all hear. And they have this like sense of like they're talking to an old friend. That also makes me nervous. It feels like they are being, again, I'm like in Baldur's Gate brain right now, but it feels like they're being hit with like charm person. I don't like that. I don't trust it. I think I'm supposed to, but I don't.
Really charismatic, Will.
I know. And he is, as we find out, he is a prince. Like, it is kind of his job.
Put some respect on this dying alien's name.
The final lines in this chapter is he is saying, they have come to destroy you, which is a baller way to end a chapter. And then we jump right into
exposition land.
What the fuck is going on here? So we know that this alien is from a race called Andalites. And then there are evil aliens called Yerks and controllers. For a long time, I had no fucking clue what a controller was. I only knew about Yerks. And so when the controllers got introduced, I was like, what the fuck is this? I thought it was
interesting.
Just
yeah, a controller is just what you call another race another being that's being enslaved by a Yerk.
Yeah. Would work on me. Would work. I'd be
what would be the argument?
Yeah.
You're just hey, I'm a slug, welcome me into your brain?
Yeah. If a
chill.
slug came up to me and it was like, hi, I would like to take over your body and your brain, and we'll peace out, I would be like, I'm sold. And it would be like, I didn't even tell you about the benefits for you yet. And I'd be like, you're good. That's fine. That's sufficient. Let's go. So the Andalite explains the Yerk situation. Like you said, the Yerk turns it slugs up into people and it controls them. They are rat-sized, which is a lot bigger than I remembered.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then the Andalite...
They squeeze into your brain.
Yes.
Through your ear canal.
Yes. Which is... It's gross, but...
Yeah. Also, probably in reality wouldn't work if you wanted an easier way to get up into the brain. Yeah. Probably go up through the nose.
The nose, yeah. Or if you're gonna, again, if you're gonna Baldur's Gate, going through the eye.
There's just something viscerally gross about something. It's like you know, people's thoughts about like earwigs and like finding spider eggs in their ears. Like there's just something viscerally uncomfortable about something crawling into your ear to get at your brain. Ugh.
And I feel like at the age this was written for, there's also something very wet willy about it.
Absolutely.
So the Andalite is like, listen, go into my ship, get this box, because I have to give you this technology right now or everyone is going to die. So Jake goes into the spaceship, and this is why I thought that this guy was a baby. The spaceship is so booba coated. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
So with like the booba and kiki, everything in these books is very booba and kiki coated. So it's all like beige and round. And I was like, in my head, I was thinking of like this minimalist babies trend, you know, with these like beige baby toys. And I was like, oh my God, he's a baby. I was so convinced.
I know, right?
But then
I'm just looking at your notes and just in all caps, is he a baby? No, but he has babies. Okay.
Yeah. So like immediately after, I was like reeling from what I thought was a revelation that he was a baby. Then we get the picture of his family and he has babies. So like I guess Andalite aesthetics are just like baby coded. But he has babies, which is like arguably, well, I don't know, worse, better. It's bad. It's additionally bad. He tells them, okay, I have this technology that will turn you can turn into any animal if you have touched the animal and collected their DNA. There's limitations, but he's like, I am dying. Like, we gotta go.
I don't have time.
Because, yeah, like, and people are on their way. Like, everything is so bad. And Marco is like, I don't believe any of this shit is even happening. Meanwhile, everybody else is pretty game. Cassie especially is like, fuck yeah, let's go. Turn into animals? Yes. And they can all feel his emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And they know that he is so sad to be dying and that his feeling towards the Yerks is hatred. And in this moment, I knew that they were going to feel him die. I knew in this moment. And I was like, this is going to be so fucked up. Chapter 4, they're introducing like a whole ton of shit because the evil aliens arrive. So we have a bug fighter, which I thought was a type of creature, but it's not. It's a spaceship.
Oh no, it's the ship. Yeah.
Yeah. So it looks like a legless cockroach. Then we have the Hork-Bajir, which are these like big, bad, scary guys. And they have bent back T-Rex legs, long snake necks, falcon's beaks, and 3 horns. I can like barely conceptualize that in my head. It looks a little bit in my head like the long snake neck is what gets me. And then they have blades sticking out from everywhere. So from their elbows and their wrists, they are like ready to fight. And these ones are Hork-Bajir controllers. So they are being controlled by these Yerks. So we also get taxons, which are like big millipedes with red jello eyes and like horrid lamprey teeth at the back end. And the thing is that I think that sounds like it would be cute. Like, I know that these are so evil coded, but like, again, it just doesn't work on me like that. I think they sound kind of sweet. The Andalite says, he's like, very quickly explaining what the fuck is going on here to these kids who are watching these aliens arrive. And he says that the taxons are evil, like cut and dry taxons are evil. This is another thing that makes me not trust the Andalite. I don't believe that a species can be evil.
Well, I think the thing with the taxons that you learn in like book 2 a little bit more is that as a whole, the taxons as a species for the most part are all voluntary controllers.
Yes.
They're like, yeah,
Yes.
sure, fuck me up. Because they're very cannibalistic, they're very primal, they're very much just like, I want to eat. I want to eat. I want to eat dead things. I want to tear things open. I want to eat. Which,
I love
you
them.
know, is like, you know, that's something for, you know, considering that to be like evil.
Right.
You know, but it's the like, what is morality in this kind of world where you have like enslavement and people are like, yeah, sure, fucking cool.
Then we also meet Visser 3. This is a name that was familiar to me, but I didn't really remember. First off, fucking sick name.
Right?
Really cool sounding. I like that it's kind of pulling on Vizier. You know, it's just, it just sounds fucking sick. So he is a controller who can shapeshift like the Andalite, and he looks like an Andalite. And it is because he is a controller of an Andalite. So he's an Andalite that got yerked. And he is, to our knowledge, the only controller who can shapeshift, the only one with that ability.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like it's because
he's the only Yerk who has managed to infest an Andalite.
Yes. Yes. So the Andalite says, put your hand on this box. This is going to give you this power and this technology. So they do it. Marco is the only one who seems really hesitant, but he still does it. Tobias, something going on here. So Tobias is like, for the first time since we got introduced to him, like, it seems like he is completely like at peace. He is so in ease in the situation. Jake, I have a passage pulled here. Finally, I looked at Tobias. It was weird, the feeling I had at that moment, staring at him. A chill or something. We have to, Tobias said to me. Slowly, I nodded. Yes, we have no choice. So this is all about them putting their hands on the box and like getting these powers. And Tobias seems uniquely keyed into all of this. And before they leave, the Andalite touches Tobias specifically. And Tobias has this like inscrutable look on his face. And Jake clocks this of like, something happened there. We don't know until later. But essentially, the Andalite just like drop boxed him like a ton of PNGs. Like
sends him a slideshow. Yeah. Everything you need to know about the Yerk invasion 101.
Yeah. It's very like Fifth Element, like Lulu watching TV, but like all at once. And poor Tobias is like, like, I guess I have to sort through this all now. So Tobias becomes their kind of like stand-in, like delegate from the Andalites almost. Like he has the information. He's going to be our like info drop boy going forward. But he seems really connected with them, which is really interesting. I don't know. There's got to be like more plot stuff here. But I think it also kind of clues into this thematic storytelling that we've gotten so far with Tobias feeling and being seen as an outsider. You know, like he feels this comfort with these aliens. He gets them. And I think that that's a really sweet tie together that like, and I think that this relates to the trans stuff, which I haven't gotten to many trans feelings about Tobias yet. I'm excited.
Oh, see, I already get it, and I've got a passage saved for when we get to it.
Oh, I can't
There
wait.
is already a line that I'm like, oh.
So I like this idea of like, as an outsider in a large, like in society, basically, that you find community with other outsiders, that feels very real to me. Whether we're looking at Tobias as trans, as not neurodivergent, like we know that he is, even if he's just a normal boy, neurotypical nerd, he is still an outsider.
Other. He's other.
Yes, exactly. These ships all land and everything is so fucking bad. They have guns, there's a ton of them, and they're coming right at these kids. And we launch into chapter 5. Visser 3 confirmed as an Andalite controller, and we know that this Andalite was a prince, and his name is, and I'm not gonna say this right at all.
Prince Elfangor Serenial Shamtul.
Okay, Elfangor.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's the way I've pronounced it. Elfangor.
Okay.
People do different ones, but yeah.
Legit. Hey, how come henceforth they still call him the Andalite? That's so disrespectful.
You couldn't just remember his name.
I know Prince Elfangor. It was just a matter of pronunciation.
I think it's probably because that's the only Andalite they've met other than like Visser 3, who isn't really an Andalite anymore.
Right.
And everything is really overwhelming. And they're like, well, this guy said that the Andalite.
Yeah. It still seems he's a prince, guys.
One thing I also really appreciate about these books is how alien the aliens are, right? Like, we're so used to just seeing like little green men, but like,
nah,
there are so many different aliens, and there's so many incredibly not humanoid aliens, and it's great.
like even I think the most humanoid we get are the Andalites, and they're still pretty fucking different. Then we're in chapter 6. So Visser 3 evaporates the Andalite ship with a Dracon beam. And in the light of that, Jake sees 3 to 4 human people. Not good. He's like, they're fighting, and Visser 3 transforms into this big eldritch horror and picks up Prince Elfangor and is about to eat him. And we go to chapter 6. Jake almost gives up where they're hiding because he keeps being like, no, don't do it. I don't know how they didn't get killed right then and there.
There are many, many instances in these books where you're like, how?
Yeah.
I love you and your dumb children.
Yes. Yes. Jake hears a familiar laugh from these human people. And I immediately was like, oh, one of them has got to be Tom. And then I said Tom Controller. And in fact, we find out later, yes. And then even though Jake is like, no, don't do it, Prince Elfangor full on gets eaten, and they have that moment and they feel him die. And the passage is, at the very end, he cried out. His cry of despair was in our heads. His cry will always be in our heads. These books go hard so immediately.
So much. Yeah. Well,
That's
and I think
fucked.
it's so what I really, there's this thing that I think it's Cassie that says it to Jake when he's about to be like, no, and he's gonna grab like a lead pipe and fucking fight this eldritch horror. And and Elfangor like thought speaks to Jake, be like, no, don't do this. And Cassie's like, don't. Like, he doesn't want us to die for him. Can't you see that he's dying for us?
Yes.
Yeah, it's so good.
So good.
Yeah. Oh, and the like last thing that he like tells them is like, I can't tell you all the limitations and shit, but the most important thing, don't be in a morph for more than 2 hours.
Yeah. He sure does tell them that.
Yep.
He sure does.
He sure does.
Now, I'll put a pin in that. I'll talk about it when we get to it. It's so hard not to talk about the thing right now. So the kids are being chased by the Hork-Bajir controllers, and they're hiding in this construction area. And then, here's a fucked up thing that happens and nobody talks about it. Jake runs across a homeless man who is staying in the construction site and literally fucking leaves him for dead. And like, he doesn't seem to like think about this afterwards. It just happens. And then that's it.
Yeah.
Does this ever come up again?
Not really. I mean, because I know it's terrible. I think it's meant to be like, this is the gravity of the situation. It's Jake mentions that he tries to like warn the guy, but any longer, and he would have been caught by a Hork-Bajir controller.
Yeah.
Like,
fucked
again,
up.
Immediately into the like horrors of war. You gotta make sacrifices. I guess if I gotta save myself and save the world, I can't stop and try to save this guy.
Yeah.
It's fucked.
Oh, jeez, that's so rough. I wish maybe Jake would have ruminated and had more guilt about it, just in as much as like homeless and unhoused activism brain, you know, but like, again, 96. Right. 96.
Yeah, 96.
So in chapter 7, they have made it home, they're safe, and we are introduced to an extremely important character who is Dude, who is Tobias's cat. Fucking awesome name. We also get this background on Tobias's really sad family. So he has an uncle who is his guardian here, who Tobias is with most of, or like half of the time. His aunt and his uncle are divorced, and his aunt is on the other coast. Now, this is where my theories were like, wait, hold up, where are we? And then I was thinking like, well, I assumed it was California, just because that's where I just thought. But now I live in New York, and like we have like a lot of these like overgrown abandoned construction sites. That feels very East Coast, but like maybe it feels very West Coast. Maybe it's just, I don't know. So that's where this all comes from. The dad, we have no clue what the deal is on the dad. I don't think that the mom knew that, like, I don't think that the dad was in the picture. And then the mom just up and left a few years ago.
Right.
So this is extremely depressing.
Yeah, I think I said at the top that like maybe his parents died, but his parents are just not in the picture, and his guardians are barely in the picture.
Yeah, but they seem, like you said, like very removed. Like, you know, I would border on probably pretty neglectful.
Yeah.
Tobias seems very lonely, very off on his own, but now he has this exciting power. So he gets the DNA from Dude. He transforms in front of Jake, and his eyes glow green when he does it.
Oh, that's just him turning into a cat. That's just Jake observing his eyes turning into reflective green cat eyes.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no special green glow. It's just him being like, I didn't notice anything different, except for like his eyes were fucking weird. Because the morphs happen in like all sorts of different ways.
I really thought
I saw that in your notes, and I was like, oh, sweet baby Will.
I was like, this has something to do with his weird connection with the Andalite, because nobody else's eyes glow green.
This is so much fun.
Okay, cool. Well,
this is so fun. No, that's fucking great.
So Tobias comes over and is like, hey, look, it's real, and transforms into Dude, and Jake is like, what the fuck? So then we get introduced to Jake's dog, Homer. Tobias, Jake is like, can you please turn back into a human person? This is freaky. Tobias turns back into a human. Tobias tells Jake that he is their leader, and Jake is immediately like, I don't think so. I don't think I have that aptitude, because he fucking hates himself. And Tobias is like, again, working on this angle of like, we have to do this. You have to be the leader. You are the only one who can bring this group together, which I think is underselling Cassie a bit, but I get it. And Tobias,
Tobias has a little bit of like a hero complex for Jake, just the way that like Jake has interacted with him and kind of saved him from bullies too. So
that totally makes sense. I didn't even think of that.
Yeah.
And Tobias is like, go find Homer, get his DNA. You got to do this. Then we get to chapter 9, where Jake turns into Homer, and we get our first person POV morphing.
Mhm.
And it's fucking disgusting. So it's so gross. And I think one of the things about the book covers is like growing up, I don't think that I thought that they were gross on purpose. I think I couldn't conceptualize that a book for kids would have something that's gross on purpose. I thought that they were just kind of like goofy and like
Mhm.
weren't aware that it looked like a disgusting, horrific process. No, they're so aware. Like
Absolutely.
those covers were so fucked up on purpose. They are not just goofy. It is a disgusting, horrific process.
And the covers don't even
No.
cover it.
Nah. They
There's only
scrape
so
the
much you
surface
can do
barely.
with like with drawing.
Yeah. It's so gross. And it has this feeling, and I have another passage here. Jake says, "My bones, ... Well, they didn't exactly hurt, but they did feel very strange. You know when you go to the dentist and he gives you Novocaine so the drill doesn't really hurt, but you know it should hurt? I guess that's what it's like." Again, fucked up. And also, this leads me to more of like, I don't fucking trust these andalites. I don't like that. I'm glad it doesn't hurt, but this feels like, do you remember this is so niche and so like old, but I think sometime around like 2012 to 2014, people realized that the reason that Johnson's baby shampoo doesn't hurt babies' eyes isn't because it has like nice ingredients that won't hurt their eyes, but because it has a numbing agent in it.
Oh shit, I'm learning this today.
Okay, so that's wild, right? Like,
yeah.
It like that, it makes sense logically. Like, yeah, how do you make soap that just doesn't hurt a baby's eyes? But also, like, there's something creepy about that. So there's something kind of insidious about it. I don't know what it is.
There's
like,
so much you don't know about morphing technology.
Oh my god, oh no!
It is infinitely more horrific than you can
fuck.
think.
I'm excited and terrified. That's like exactly what my brain thought about. Was this feeling of like
put in your back pocket the concept of like conservation of mass.
Oh no.
Just stick that in your pocket. This is a nice little Easter egg for all the people who will be listening to this who know Animorphs. Just put that in your pocket.
Oh wow. Okay. Back pocket. Don't think about that too hard right now. So Jake turns into Homer, and he is immediately taken over by dog instinct. And he, like, right off the bat, struggles to remember what his human brain feels like and his human brain logic. He's got these really intense primal instincts that he's having a hard time separating from his logic. And like right off the bat, this felt very familiar to me as somebody with diagnosed PTSD. They just witnessed this extremely horrific event last night. And when you're having a flashback or a trigger comes up or something like that with PTSD, it is really hard to separate your logic from your very like human biological fight or flight instincts and that panic. And I know that that is not like literally what's going on in the text, but I do think like I think about had I read these books as a kid a lot, because unfortunately a lot of my trauma and the locus of my PTSD is from my very early childhood. I think that if I had read these books when I was little, I would have felt very seen by this and had no idea why. You know what I mean?
It's almost as if like the first moments of a morph can feel in some ways like trying to get hold of a dissociation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. So, struggling with this, Jake sees Homer outside and is like, dog on my lawn, and starts barking, which then catches Tom's attention. So Tom comes in because he hears the barking, and he sees that what he thinks is Homer is in Jake's room and is just barking. And he calls Jake Homer a bad dog. And Jake is so
he's so sad.
He's so distraught by this, which is, I think, precious. And he notes that Tom smells weird and that Tom's laugh is definitely the same laugh that he heard around Visser 3.
Dun, dun, dun.
Chapter 10, we get background on the other, like a few of the others' families. We don't really get Rachel's family until book 2, but so Jake calls everybody and plans to meet at Cassie's farm in a few hours. Until then, Tom and Jake talk, and it's like very strange and awkward. So Jake finally brings up that he did not get on the basketball team. And he has been dreading this since like literally page 1 or 2. So he's been dreading this. He thinks that Tom is going to be so mad or so disappointed. And Tom is like, oh, I don't give a fuck. It's fine. I don't give a shit. And Jake is like, who are you? And Tom is like, yeah, I super don't give a shit. I quit a few days ago. I just didn't even tell anybody because it mattered to me that little. Jake is like, what's going on? And then Tom is like, I've been spending a lot of time at this club called The Sharing.
The Sharing.
Totally normal name that I absolutely trust, and not the name of a cult. Like,
definitely not the name of a cult. I think,
definitely
like,
not.
Marco gets it immediately. He's like, yeah, this definitely seems like a cult.
Yes. So they meet up at the farm, and again, Marco, like you said, he is clocking everything, and he does not fucking want in. Because we find out more about Marco's family, and this shit is so sad.
Everybody's sad.
Everybody's sad. So a few years ago, and I should have realized that when we were talking about Tobias, it's like, are his parents dead? Because no, Marco's kind of like got the corner on dead parents.
Yeah.
His mom drowned 2 years ago. Now, a note on that. They never found her body. And I am convinced that she did not drown, that she has been yerked somewhere, and K.A. Applegate is like just waiting until the most traumatic possible moment to bring out Marco, who's thought for years that his mom is dead, and here she is, and she's going to be used to lure him in and yerk him. I'm convinced. Do not tell me anything.
I'm not.
Okay. So Marco thinking that his mom is dead, which I'm not convinced about, but his dad has spiraled. So he used to be an industrial engineer. He lost his job. He is super agoraphobic. He's working as a night janitor. There is this really extremely sad detail that his dad just watches TV with the sound off.
Yeah.
And something about that is like just the profound depression that evokes of like even the sound on TV is too overstimulating is devastating.
Yeah. The man is fucked up. He's fucked up over it.
Yeah.
And so, like, Marco is just carrying all of that on his shoulders. He instantly has to become a parent, basically.
Yeah, exactly. So he's been completely parentified by the situation because his dad is no longer capable of parenting him. And because of that, Marco feels extremely protective of his father and also feels like the sole caretaker of his father. And that is largely driving, I mean, like, it seems like he's scared and like he doesn't want to, do this, but he's especially scared because he can't fathom dying and leaving his dad alone.
I know.
That's so
He's like, if I'm gone,
sad.
my dad is just like, I don't know what he's gonna do. I'm an 11 or 12-year-old child and I'm afraid to die.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah. And Tobias is judgy about that. Tobias is kind of bitchy sometimes.
Tobias is definitely kind of bitchy sometimes. I mean, he's got this like really like intense connection to the Andalite and to Elfangor, and he's like using this as like, come on guys, we have to do this, but
he kind of
everybody
has
else
like a
has got
moral
their own
superiority
reasons.
complex about it, which I understand as somebody who like has not had anything to be passionate and attach himself to until now, especially at this young age. But like, man, his mom is dead. Like, chill out.
Give him a break.
Yeah. So they're talking about everything that's been going on so far, talking about last night, talking about morphing and what have you. And they realize like how many controllers there must already be everywhere. So this was a huge note for me. I really thought that this book would be, because it's called The Invasion, I thought this book would be the start of the invasion. I thought we were seeing the inciting incident of the Yeerks first coming to Earth. That's not the case at all, and that immediately makes the stakes so high and so scary.
Scary. Yeah.
So scary because they have no fucking clue who could be controllers who are here to like destroy the Earth. They have no concept of scope or numbers, and they have no concept of even how to identify these people. Like even with Tom, which we'll see, like to me as a reader, knowing the genre and knowing the trappings, like I know that Tom is a controller. This is obvious to me. But were I Jake, there's no way that would be obvious to me. I would just kind of think like, oh, Tom is like a teenager who is has lost one passion and has found another. Like that's so normal, you know?
Yeah, who's growing up and not necessarily hanging out with his kid brother as much. Like
Exactly.
It all fits. Yeah.
I also think that like, well, hold on, I'm reevaluating. I was going to say, I think that it feels like a much more natural place for most other books in these genres to start with like the inciting incident of what all is going on. But then I thought about like, well, in Percy Jackson, that's obviously all been going on for like ever, literally. And in Harry Potter, like the wizarding world is a thing. So that makes sense. But I really thought like we were at the start, and that is so not the case. And I love that they have so little information here. It makes sense from a storytelling perspective because we use them as like our foot in the door for understanding this world and what's going on. Like we learn with them, which feels very natural. But it also again makes everything so scary.
Yeah.
Like you really have no idea who you can trust. And I love that kind of story.
It's very X-Files. It's very trust no one. Yeah.
Yes.
Which was also like in the zeitgeist at the time that these books are coming out.
Yeah, it fucking owns.
Yeah.
So, we should also talk about the farm. So we get Cassie's family. We get background on them. So her dad is a vet at their wildlife rehabilitation clinic, which is the farm. So this takes in like non-pet animals. So it'll take in like horses and like probably a badger and
like injured birds.
Right, birds. Lots of birds. And then her mom is a vet at the Gardens. And the Gardens is a huge amusement park with a zoo. Which again, like where the fuck does this take place? But so her parents are very animal-y, which again gets us like really, really good ins for all of this. And in fact, as they're talking, Jake is like, hey, where the fuck is Cassie? And they're like, oh, she's over there. And she's literally a horse. Cassie rules.
Cassie's like, sup, I'm a horse.
Yep. And then
and Cassie is real good at it.
Oh, she's so good at it. She is like incredibly adept at morphing. She can control it really well.
She makes morphing graceful.
Yes. And she's figured out how to do it with clothes on.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I don't think we mentioned that. Yanaki.
Because like, shapes change, but if you wear tight-fitting clothes, you won't like athletic wear, pretty much, like stretchy, tight clothes, you should be fine and you won't have to be naked. And
Mhm.
Cassie is the one who's figured this out and how to do it. And then out of fucking nowhere, the cops are there.
Animorphs say A-cab.
Yes. I thought initially that the cops were coming in to be like, hey, we heard about some disturbance at this construction site. What's going on? I thought it was just going to be like cops doing cop things. No. These are immediately corrupt cops who are coming to do like COINTELPRO. They are fully yerked. They are controllers. They know Tom. They're part of the sharing. And they're like, hey, Jake, why don't you come to the sharing? You know, you look like this kid I know. Are you his brother? Like, these books really introduced cops and were immediately like, oh, they're corrupt, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
and it's,
so
and
fucking
it's important
cool.
to note that, like, a bunch of neighbors, when they saw a fucking spaceship and heard an eldritch monster, called the cops and were like, hey, there's fucking spaceships and like eldritch monsters happening. And immediately the cops were like, no, it was just a bunch of kids with fireworks.
Yes.
So that tells them like how deep this already goes. And like, you know, whatever, let's go to the cops or let's get a video camera and film this. Nobody's going to leave these kids because these institutions are already infested.
Exactly. And I really like, and we'll get into this more in book 2, but the Yerks understand sociological power and the power of institutions. And that's what they target first and foremost and the hardest, is they are looking for people in positions of power and utilizing that power. And I'm sure we're going to get to like politicians and what have you, but I really love that in this first book, they immediately, the first instance you get is the cops. And the fact that the cops are the bad guys. It's so good. So they wiggle their way out of this like very light questioning. And then they kind of share like a vote on what to do. And the vote is, Tobias says, you know, of course I'm doing this. Cassie also says, of course I'm doing this. I love having these powers and I want to use them to help endangered species, which I think is lovely.
Yeah.
Rachel says yes because they have a responsibility to help. Marco says absolutely fucking not. I want nothing to do with this. And Jake says, let's chill. Let's take some time. Let's pause this. And everybody's like, okay. Marco and Jake go to very awkwardly play some more video games. Tom shows up to join them and tries to like recruit them into the sharing again. And Marco, very end of this chapter, says, Jake, Tom's a controller. And then like
Jake fucking punches Marco.
Jake decks him in the face. I was not ready.
Say that again, motherfucker.
I was not ready. It's so funny.
And like, what is that? Like, it opens the chapter with that?
Yes.
God.
It's so good. It's so good. And I totally don't blame him. So Jake does not believe Marco. He refuses to believe Marco. But it's like very clear that he, somewhere deep down, he's putting the pieces together. Things like hearing Tom's laugh, the way that Tom has been acting, but Jake is still, he's like refusing to let himself believe it. So then, in the midst of all of this, Tobias shows up as a red-tailed hawk. And
like at his window, just tap, tap, tap with his little beaky.
Yes. I think we gotta talk about this because one of the things where if you know anything about Animorphs past, like the book covers, you probably know that Tobias permahawks. He stays in a morph for too long and he stays a hawk forever. So I vaguely knew that it was Tobias. I knew that somebody turned into a hawk forever. I wasn't sure who it was. And And Tobias showed up, and the dread, dread that hit me in that moment. Because, like, it's very different knowing that it's a meme that Tobias turns into a hawk forever than it is to, like, get to know Tobias and see him as a hawk and know that, like, eventually he is going to be a hawk forever. I had so much dread. And I sort of had, like, podcast guilt having that spoiler because I was convinced that this was a spoiler for somewhere around, like, book 20, book 30.
Nope.
Turns out, no.
Book 1,
Put a pin in that, listener.
Yeah.
So,
this series goes fucking hard.
The series goes
Your
hard.
first POV book of Tobias is him fully in hawk, just as a hawk.
That's crazy.
Like,
That's crazy.
the first time you get a POV from this boy in the books is he is already a permahawk.
Unreal.
Yeah.
So Tobias says that he was a hawk because he was scoping out for a Yerk pool. So a Yerk pool, we get the information. This is one of the, like, Dropboxed PNGs that Tobias got. The Yerk pools are these big pools of water, or not water. We'll get to that. They're pools of goop.
Liquid.
Yeah, and they are where the Yerks have to leave their host bodies every 3 days. Very important. To go get nutrients from a device elsewhere called the Kandrona. That the Kandrona turns the nutrients into particles that get beamed and concentrated into the pools. And then the Yerks go and, like, get revitalized in there. The timing of this every 3 days is super important and plays in huge to their plans. I did remember Yerk pools from the TV show. The execution of the Yerk pools, gotta say, pretty lackluster.
Yeah. They don't get the scope of it. They don't get the grandiosity and the size of it.
No, I thought that the Yerk pools. So Tobias says that he's looking for, like, swimming pools that look fucked up. I thought that the Yerk pools were going to be, like, the size of, like, a dinner table. Neither of those are right. We'll get to that. But yeah, the scope, not accurate in the show. So we have this big confrontation between Tobias, Jake, and Marco. Because Tobias is, like, already out doing work. And Jake is like, I thought we paused. Like, I said, let's pause. Or Cassie said, let's pause. Why are we not pausing? And Tobias is like, I don't feel a need to pause. I know what I'm doing. And Marco is like, I'm not fucking doing this. Stop trying to get me to fucking do this. And this is a confrontation that lasts at least through the entire book. It also carries over a bit to book 2. I really love that Jake is a protagonist here and a, like, leader who does not focus first and foremost on action. He focuses on gathering information and thinking and processing and, like, really coming to grips with what you're doing before you're doing it. That feels so unique to me in this genre. I feel like we always have characters who, you know, have this. They're the ones with the hero complex, which Jake does not have. It is being projected onto him.
Well, and that's what you want. That's you don't want a leader who's like, I want to be a leader.
Yes. Right.
You know?
This is also why I think that the Young Justice team could, like, knock this out of the water. That's, like, a huge conflict in Young Justice, is, like, who's going to be the Batman or the Superman, you know?
Yeah.
I love this. I just think this is so much about this series is so sophisticated to me. Not only in a way, like, just for, like, kids' books, but I also think this is, like, the kind of gracefulness and execution of a good leader that, like, we don't get in a lot of, like, media for big kids either. Jake kind of shuts this shit down. And then Marco is emotionally blackmailing Jake, pretty bitch.
Grasping at straws.
Which is so sad, like, in context. So Marco is like, oh, so you want to fight? You want to fight this fight? Oh, you want to kill your fucking brother who's a controller? Are you cool with that? And it is very immediately clear that Marco is so jealous of Jake's family. Jake has this normal family. It functions well. You know, he hasn't been super close with his brother, but that's like the only thing wrong in his family. And Marco has nothing. He has the shell of his father, and his mom is dead. That's it. So of course he's grasping at threads. He is desperate to get Jake on his side here. And we find out more later that makes this even more fucking sad. But it's just a very humanizing, very sophisticated writing detail that we can see Marco desperate to convince his friend.
And also to, you know, have him come from the same perspective of, like, you know, there are real emotional stakes here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Nevermorphed is hosted, edited, and produced by Will Williams. Our theme music is The Chase by Joey Hendricks. Our title is by Eddie Feely, and this podcast would not exist without Mike Schubert's podcast, Potterless and the Newest Olympian. You can find his works at shub.es, that's shub.es. Nevermorphed is a proud member of Hug House Productions. You can find more at hughouse.productions and follow us on Tumblr at Nevermorphed. Get morphin'! On March 27th, 2024, Elon Musk was deposed in a libel lawsuit filed by Ben Brody. Musk's lawyer, Alex Spiro, tried to retroactively mark the deposition as confidential, but it wasn't.
Of course I can ask him, do you think you committed actual malice? Do you think you were reckless? Of course I can ask those questions.
The deposition is a new Hug House podcast reenactment of the entire deposition, word by word, in full, taken very seriously.
Things that he did wrong.
But that's the point. That's not what you're allowed
Until he really just, can't anymore?
Not what you're allowed to do in the deposition. You can't just get him talking.
The deposition drops on the 4th of July, 2024, with 4 weekly episodes. Subscribe on your podcatcher of choice or find us at hughouse.productions today.